Somewhere in a West Virginia holler, there is a trail camera photo taken just after 2 in the morning that people still argue about. A hog standing in a backyard, taller at the shoulder than the porch rail behind it. 11 predators in these mountains grow far past the size the record books allow them, and we are counting them down. Danger is not what puts them in order. What matters is how far each one climbs past its own limits here, and how completely it slips the picture you carry of these gentle, settled hills. The animal in that photograph is where we end. Number 11, the bobcat. Across every state these mountains touch, from the ridges of northern Georgia up into New York, the bobcat is thriving, quietly, and almost no one ever sees one. A grown male in the northern Appalachians can run past 30 pounds, close to twice the weight most people picture when they hear the word cat. He hunts at the soft edges of the day, the gray hour before dawn and the gray hour after dusk, and the rest of the time he is folded into a laurel thicket or a rock ledge, the exact color of dead leaves and wet bark, watching the trail below him. He learned this as a kitten. Stillness is the first lesson, because movement is the one thing that gives him away, and a bobcat that has not learned to be still does not grow old. The reason you have never seen one is not that they are rare. They are not rare at all. Their numbers are healthy across the range and climbing in places. It is that the whole life of this animal is arranged around not being a thing you notice, and it is very good at its life. He will let you pass within 30 feet, close enough to hear you breathe, and never so much as shift his weight. Most of them you walk right past without ever knowing they watched you go. That is the first idea this whole list is built on, and it only gets stranger from here. Number 10, the eastern hellbender. In the cold, clear, fast-running streams of these mountains, from southern New York down into northern Georgia, there lives an animal that grows to nearly 2.5 feet long and can weigh as much as 5 pounds, and it is a salamander. It is the largest salamander in all of North America. The people who grew up wading these creeks call it the snot otter, or the Allegheny alligator, or the mud devil, and most of them have never actually laid eyes on one, because it spends its entire life underwater, pressed flat beneath a single large rock, breathing through the loose folds of skin along its sides, coming out only in the dark to hunt crayfish and small fish. Its scientific name means hidden gill. When the water turns warm or muddy, the hellbender dies. So where you find one, you have found a stream still clean and cold enough to trust, which is a rarer thing every year. The trouble for the animal is that the word salamander will not stretch around a predator the length of your arm, so the mind files it wrong, and a 2-foot creature stays invisible by category alone. You have swum over them. In the swimming holes where you learned to swim, one was very likely underneath you, older than the bridge upstream, holding still while you passed. People who do see them often kill them out of plain fear, and in 2024, federal biologists proposed protecting the eastern hellbender across its entire range. Most people will never even know it was here to lose. If you are already leaning in, do yourself a favor and subscribe before we climb higher up this list, because the animals that turn up in these mountains are exactly what this channel goes looking for, and subscribing is how the next one finds you when it drops. Number 9. The great horned owl. On almost any night up here you can hear it, that low, even 5-note call drifting down off the ridge, and the sound lands as something cozy. A piece of the dark you are glad is out there. Almost no one translates it into what is actually overhead. This is a bird with a wingspan that can approach 5 feet, crossing the night in complete silence, because the leading edge of each wing feather is combed into a soft fringe that erases the sound of moving air before it can reach the ear of anything below. It hunts by hearing, its 2 ears set at different heights so it can place a mouse under snow in total blackness. It is one of the very few predators that will regularly kill and eat a skunk. It takes other owls. It lifts hawks off the branch while they sleep. It has carried off house cats from back porches. Its feet close and lock with a strength built to end the catch-on contact before the prey understands it has been touched. And it does all of this a few hundred feet above the porches where people sit listening to it call and feeling, if anything, a little comforted by the company. The danger overhead gets filed as atmosphere. That is the trick the whole ridge is playing on you, and it works every single night of the year. Number 8. The timber rattlesnake. You already know the sound this animal is supposed to make, and that is exactly why it earns a place on this list. The timber rattlesnake of these mountains is a heavy-bodied pit viper that averages 3 to 5 feet, with records reaching past 6. And its venom is more than strong enough to kill a grown person. But it is the quiet one of its whole family. Where you picture a rattlesnake coiling and buzzing and warning you off, the timber rattler far more often does the opposite. It lies motionless, dead leaf brown and banded with dark chevrons, along a fallen log or a sunlit rock, and it will hold that pose for days, waiting for a mouse or a chipmunk to follow the same trail it always follows. When a hiker comes instead, the snake trusts its camouflage completely and lets that hiker step within a single stride, and never sounds the rattle it is named for. The old people in these hollers used to say a rattlesnake could charm you, could hold you still with its eyes. What actually holds you still is that you cannot see it, and it has no reason to tell you where it is. So the danger here is not the strike. It is the 10,000 quiet times a boot has come down 8 inches from a coiled timber rattler, and the person walked on, and the woods simply let them off. Number 7. The common snapping turtle. In nearly every farm pond, cattle tank, and slow green river in these mountains, there is a predator that almost everyone has written off as scenery. The common snapping turtle can reach 75 pounds, and while the average one is smaller than that, the average one is also far older than you would ever guess. These animals routinely live past 40 years, and some past 60, sitting on the bottom half buried in silt, shell-furred with algae, doing very little and missing nothing. It moves slowly on land and looks almost comic there. In the water, it swims better than an Olympic swimmer, and when something drifts into range, the neck uncoils, and the beak closes in under 2/100ths of a second. Faster than you can blink, faster than you can flinch. It will take a duckling down from below without a ripple. It is called a pond turtle, and dismissed as one. And the flat green water hides both the size of the old ones and the sheer number of years they have been down there watching the same bank. The thing you skip stones over on a summer afternoon may have been alive before your parents were born. And it is very likely still there. Number 6. The fisher. 100 years ago, you could not have put this animal on a list of Appalachian predators because it was gone. Trapping for its fur and the clearing of the great forests wiped the fisher, a dark, low-slung member of the weasel family, out of most of its southern range by the early 1900s. Then the forests grew back over the abandoned farms, and biologists carried the fisher back in with them, and now it is spreading through second-growth woods and the wooded edges of towns where nobody is expecting it. Here is what keeps it hidden. Because it was officially gone for so long, the human mind will not put it here. So when a fisher screams in the dark, and its scream is a genuinely awful sound, like something in pain, people blame it on a bobcat, or a fox, or a woman in trouble, on anything at all except the animal actually making the noise. The fisher is also one of the only predators on this continent clever enough to kill and eat a porcupine, working around to the face and flipping it over to get past the quills. It can turn its hind feet almost all the way around to climb down a trunk head first and chase a squirrel through the canopy. It came back from a raised, and it is climbing into country that had already forgotten it existed, wearing a name most people still think belongs to a story. Wherever you are watching this from tonight, I would like to know if you have ever heard something out in the trees that you could not put a name to. Leave it down in the comments. Someone reading them has heard the exact same thing. Number 5, the golden eagle. When you picture a golden eagle, a bird with a wingspan of 6 to 7 feet, and more than that on the largest of them, you almost certainly picture it over a western canyon. It is large enough that its only natural enemies are bears and wolverines, and on the far side of the world, falconers have flown its cousins at full-grown wolves. For a very long time, the field guides agreed with you that it belonged out west, and so nobody went looking for it here. They were wrong. There is a hidden population, thought to be around 5,000 birds, that breeds in the remote spruce country of Quebec and Labrador and comes south every single winter to ride the ridge lines of these exact mountains, heaviest along the line between Virginia and West Virginia, some of them pushing all the way down into Alabama and Georgia. The ones that breed farthest north travel farthest south, leapfrogging over the rest. The reason you have not seen them is that they winter in the highest, most forested, least peopled folds of the range, feeding through the cold months largely on carrion, and they are almost impossible to spot from a road. Researchers only proved the birds were here at all by dragging road-killed deer into remote clearings and aiming motion cameras at the carcasses, then trapping a few eagles and fitting them with tracking tags that report a location every 15 minutes. A wildlife biologist named Todd Katzner helped build that work, along with the Eastern Golden Eagle Working Group, formed in 2010, and together they have spent years assembling the portrait of an enormous predator that was crossing these ridges the whole time, above people who would have bet the field guide it could not possibly be there. The map was simply wrong, and had been wrong for generations. Everything up to this point you could stand right beside and never register. From here down, they get larger and far harder to explain away. Number 4, the flathead catfish. This one is not supposed to be here at all, and that is the whole point of it. The flathead is a river bottom apex predator, flat across the skull, small in the eye, built like a submerged log, and in the rivers on the eastern side of these mountains, the Susquehanna and others where it was never native, it is a straight invader. Somebody carried it over the divide and dumped it, bucket by bucket, and it did what it does, which is eat. The biologists fighting these invasions put it plainly: anything that will fit inside its mouth, it swallows. A grown flathead can pass 100 pounds and stretch to 5 feet, and the American record stands at 123 pounds. It has few enemies once it is large, it grows fast, and it works its way through the native fish that actually belong in the water, hollowing the river out from the bottom. In one Georgia river alone, wildlife crews pulled more than 60,000 flatheads out over about a decade and still could not clear them. It sits on the bottom of pools you have swum across and fished over, and almost nobody counts it as a predator because it is a fish, and fish live behind a wall of water that hides everything they do. There is a 100-pound animal down there quietly taking a river apart, and the surface looks exactly the way it did before it arrived. Number 3, the eastern coyote. You have heard them at night, and you have called them coyotes, and that one small word is doing an enormous amount of work to keep you calm, because the animal in these mountains is not the coyote of the western desert. When the wolves were shot, trapped, and poisoned out of the east back in the 1800s, the coyotes that drifted in to fill all that empty country bred with the last of the wolves, and with dogs along the way, and the result carries roughly a quarter wolf ancestry and about a 10th domestic dog. A wildlife scientist named Roland Kays has spent decades on these animals, and the genetics keep telling one story, including a study of more than 400 of them across 10 northeastern states. The eastern coyote runs close to double the size of its western cousin, some past 55 pounds, with a broader jaw, more muscle, and legs that carry it through deep forest as easily as open field. A single one can pull down a small deer. A pack of them can bring down far larger, moose included. Some biologists call what happened the return of the wolf's DNA, the old genes finding their way back into the same forests without the wolf itself ever walking home. They slid into the precise gap the wolves left behind, doing the wolf's old job in the wolf's old woods, and they did it wearing a name so small and so familiar that a person can hear a wolf-sized predator working the tree line behind the house and reach for the word coyote, because that word lets them go back to sleep. 2 predators left now, and this is where these hills stop pretending to be a postcard. Number 2, the black bear. A black bear is supposed to weigh 200 to 300 pounds. That is the animal in the books, the shy, slightly comic, garbage can bear that runs from a raised voice and a banged pot. Then you come to these mountains where the fall crop of acorns and beech nuts fattens them past every rule the species is meant to follow, and the numbers stop making sense. In Pennsylvania alone, the average adult male already runs 300 to 400 pounds, and the true giants are something else entirely. The state record is a bear that came in at an estimated live weight near 875 pounds, taken in 2010. Since 1992, Pennsylvania hunters have checked in 7 separate black bears that topped 800 pounds. As recently as 2024, the single heaviest bear of the season weighed 774. These are not fenced animals. They are wild bears walking the same oak ridges that hikers walk in October. So heavy that the men who find one dead need most of a day, a sled, and every friend they can phone to drag it out of the hollow. The mascot version of this animal is a costume the real one wears until it doesn't, which leaves the animal from that photograph. Number 1. The wild boar. In the spring of 1912, a wealthy sportsman named George Gordon Moore stocked a private hunting preserve near Hooper Bald, high in the mountains of Graham County, North Carolina, shipping the animals in by train and driving them up by wagon, among them about 13 European wild boar penned behind a tall chestnut rail fence. The boar bred, and over the next several years the pen held a herd of 60 to 100, until one botched hunt let most of them out into the country for good. They went into the Great Smokies, and there they did the one thing no one had planned for. They bred with the feral and domestic hogs already loose in the hills, and the mixing of wild blood and farm blood built an animal that grows far past what any wild pig is meant to reach. A pure wild boar runs 100 to 200 pounds. The hybrids these mountains have been quietly manufacturing for more than a century do not stop there. The most famous of them, a hog called Hogzilla, killed farther south and dug up by National Geographic to settle the argument about its size, measured close to 8 feet long and weighed near 800 pounds, with a tusk a foot and a half long. They are intelligent. They move and root at night. They breed faster than anything can hunt them down, and they have become the most destructive wild mammal in the region, turning over ground by the acre in the dark and vanishing before the sun clears the ridge. And every so often one steps into the light of a backyard trail camera, taller at the shoulder than the porch rail, and the picture gets passed hand to hand, and people argue about whether it can possibly be real. It is real. It was built right here out of a mistake made in 1912, and it has been swelling in the dark ever since. So here's what this list is really about. Not fear. It is about the distance between the mountains you think you are looking at and the mountains that are actually there. The bear is up on the Oak Ridge right now, heavier than the book swears he can be. The golden eagle is riding the cold air over a ridgeline that no field guide ever told you to check. And the hog from that photograph is somewhere out past the porch light, bigger than he was last year, waiting for the yard to go quiet again. They were all here before the roads had names. They never once agreed to stay out of the picture you carry. The only thing that has ever stood between you and seeing them is that seeing them would mean living up here a little differently. And so, mostly, we don't. The mountains do not mind either way. They have all the time there is. They are patient, and they are waiting. If you like this video, YouTube also thinks you're going to like the one on your screen right now.